Hey y'all, Charlie and Ben here, and we really want to meet you in person.
And you have the opportunity to do that on Friday, June 27th in Provo, Utah at the Utah Valley Convention Center. We're hosting a podcast live event as part of the Gather Conference. This part of the conference is free, and we're going to be taking questions. We've got a few special guests, and it's going to be a hoot and a half.
We really hope you're there, and also totally consider coming to the Gather Conference itself. It's going to be an amazing lineup, and the last 2 years has been so transformative for so many people.
Yeah, you can register at gather-conference.com.
See you soon.
Well, welcome to another episode of All Out in the Open. Yes. Michael and I host this the first Tuesday of every month, and we talk about bridge building and community building. And we are so excited today to have Landon Phillips with us.
Yes. Yay. Thank you
you.
for making time.
I'm so excited to be here. This is so fun.
Yes.
Awesome.
So I met Landon first. I knew Landon's parents first from our parent nights that we have at our house. And so I got to know them. And then just through different activities and different things that we've been doing, I got to meet Landon. And so I've kind of heard your story first from your mom, and then I've gotten to know you. And it's been really a delight.
Yeah. Same. I think I met your mom first, and we did some advocacy stuff together, and I just got to know both your mom and your dad, and they were just like, you have to meet Landon. Landon is awesome. And I was like, I can't wait. And so, and then we've gotten to know each other and become friends and gotten to work with each other too, which is really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like most of my advocacy connections knew my mom first. I feel like almost everyone I meet in the sphere is like, oh, I've heard so much about you from your mom, which I'm glad that she talks highly of me.
She does.
She does. Yeah.
She does.
I always talk highly of her too. She's great.
She's the best.
Well, Landon, we know you. Michael and I know you, but we'd love for the audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us where you sit in LGBTQ, and we would love to hear a little bit of your background story. Yeah. Michael and I feel like it's really important that we're elevating the voices of our amazing trans people.
Yeah.
And so we'd love to let you tell us about you.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So I am trans.
Yes.
Trans masculine. I usually don't use labels unless people ask me for them. And so then when people ask, I'm like, oh, I got to come up with something. So I usually say that I'm trans masculine, non-binary. I use he, him pronouns. I have transitioned, assigned female at birth, taken hormones, gotten top surgery, but I definitely sit somewhere in the middle of the gender spectrum, and I don't feel too much of a need to conform either way, which can be very fun. I feel like I have a lot of room for experimentation, and I love being in this kind of gray area, but also that can be a really challenging place to be because there's not a lot of groups that I fit into very easily. Right. But I do feel very grateful and privileged and honored to live a life where I can, explore myself and be able to exist in that space and be the person that I am. So that's kind of how I identify. And I grew up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, grew up in a very active family, was very active, very invested. That my whole life kind of revolved around the church.
As we do,
right?
Yep.
I went to BYU, I served a mission, did the whole shebang. I no longer am part of the church, and that has definitely been a big part of my journey, was my faith journey. But growing up, I didn't really have any idea what being trans even was. My idea of transness was drag queens, and that was something that was threatening to me, and and I really didn't have a good idea until I went to college and I started watching videos, and in my head I'm like, wow, I'm such a good ally for watching all these videos, and I'm watching like, how do you know if you're trans, how to come out to your parents and all this stuff, but totally blocking in my mind that could even be a possibility for me.
Wow.
And then eventually, actually right before I left on my mission, I finally came to, I already had my mission call.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, I'm trans. And as soon as I got the vocabulary and as soon as I allowed myself to let go of the fear and all of the walls that were up and really accept that part of myself, or I don't think I like accepted it fully right away, but came to terms with the fact that I experienced gender dysphoria. This is what's going on for me. I came out to my parents and my sister and a couple of people I was close with, and then left on my mission.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And that was a whole experience. Came home, tried for a long time to make it work, and eventually my journey led me away from activity in the church. But it has remained really important to me that everybody be able to exercise their faith in the way that's meaningful to them. And so building bridges with church members, supporting people who are going through their journey, either like people who are LGBT, who are wanting to practice their faith and it's something that's really important to them, people who are on journeys who are stepping away from their faith or altering the way that they view their faith, people who are not LGBT but who have their minds open and who want to learn about other people. That this whole space has remained really important to me, and a big focus of my advocacy. I feel like less recently because there's so much going on politically that there's a lot to do outside of the space, but so many of the people that I love, my parents are still active, and a lot of my close friends and people that I work with. So I am... Yeah, so I've kind of like have a lot of different areas that I've been doing advocacy in, but I definitely, like, my faith journey has been a really huge part of how I have understood myself and understood the world, and for better or for worse, how I came to be such an active member of the community. And along that path, I've had the opportunity to work with Equality Arizona. I did... just kind of some general community work, worked with one community. It's been really fun learning how to be involved in local like politics and local policy and just local community. Because it took me a long time. Even when I came out, I didn't meet another trans person for like several years after I came out.
Really?
Whoa.
Before I knowingly met another trans person.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so I really felt like I was going through the whole thing completely by myself.
Whoa, how did you cope with that?
Did I cope well? I don't know, but I am still here, and I am very happy now. And I had an incredible support network with my parents, who really were along with me every step of that journey.
That's awesome.
So that's been a huge...
It might be good to point out here that... because I know there's probably a lot of preconceived notions and such. Your parents, I would say, I mean, I don't like to label people, but I would say they were pretty orthodox in their practicing of being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah. I definitely, like, growing up, there were people around me who were much more orthodox, I would say, or much more black and white thinking about the way that they practice.
Sure.
My parents were very very invested in the church, very like committed to their covenants, very committed to the culture and the community. But they were very nuanced thinkers, especially my mom. And she's always been able to put compassion and love first. So while I grew up, like, I kept the Sabbath day holy, always paid my tithing, like I was raised to really be like at times checklist member, as people say. But there was definitely space for, I guess, thinking about things a little differently and having, they have a lot of space in their hearts for hearing people's stories, and they've always been so willing to change their understanding of things and kind of reevaluate and change. And so while I definitely would say that the way that we practiced the faith was orthodox, like we really were kind of your stereotypical, like from the outside,
Yeah.
but it was not so strict of an Orthodox practice that it was as hard to come out and as hard to go on this journey as it is for a lot of other people that I know who come out in Orthodox faithful families.
Yeah.
So why I asked that is because we probably have listeners who are parents who have kids who are exploring their gender or wondering, or who have come out as either non-binary or trans, and just giving them the chance to know that, you know, I'm sure it was not exactly on Monica's, you know, expectation card that, oh, I'm gonna have a child that's gonna come out as trans, and so it was a path, it was a journey,
For sure.
but also they were willing to listen and to learn and walk with you on this journey, because you didn't know, like you said, you didn't even have language for it. And so I think that's really important for people to hear that, you know,
Yeah.
we don't have to have it all figured out right away. And if
Right.
you're questioning and wondering and having some, you know, hard talks with God and, you know, trying to navigate the space, that's normal.
Yes.
And because how long ago was your mission? What year was that?
I left in 2016.
Okay.
Okay.
Came back. I came home one transfer early from the end of my mission, so very end of 2017, for reasons unrelated to being trans. I came back for some medical things that I needed to take care of, but the stress of the gender dysphoria while being a sister missionary did not make it easier or better.
No.
But I feel like when I say that I left my mission early, people are like, oh, that's when you lost your faith. That's when you decided to become like one of those trans apostates, whatever. But like, that was not like leaving early. Although a lot of people hear that about me and I feel like make a lot of assumptions about that. Well, it would have been totally valid for me to come home for my gender dysphoria. Like that also would have been fine.
Yeah.
But at the time I was still fully like in the church, still not sure at all if I was going to transition.
Right.
But yeah, so it's been a hot minute since I was a missionary.
So
for sure.
it's been I think that's really important for families to understand that
Yes.
it is a process. You don't have to have it figured out. There will be mistakes made.
No,
and
yeah.
it's and I just think also for people to understand that you coming out to your parents before you leave on your mission, you are still presenting female. And so that means for people to understand that you're acknowledging now, I'm trans and I'm dealing with gender dysphoria, and you're still you must present as if you're going out as a female.
Yeah, I'm wearing a
Right,
dress
right.
every day.
Sister
Wow.
missionary.
Yeah.
So that is why that would flare that up a little bit more. It's not
Yeah.
like you could wear something a little androgynous or whatever to
Right,
kind
yeah.
of help with the dysphoria. So
Not
I
on
just
a
think
mission.
a lot of people who haven't thought that through maybe. Anyway, so I just wanted to.
Well, and how
Yeah,
hard
yeah.
that must have been. And also, like, I think it speaks really loudly to me of how your parents, even though you're all going through a process and figuring things out, how you all chose to put love first, you and your parents, of like loving each other, being there for each other, especially since you didn't have a trans community to support you, right? Like, wow. I relied so heavily on other trans people in my early years of transition, so I can't imagine. I'm just so grateful you had your family.
Me too. Yeah. And it was like when I first came out, we kind of like the initial response from my parents was like, okay, how are we going to fix this? Like,
Right.
what kind of hormone treatments can we get you on to make this go away, not to like transition, you know? But like, there must be something that we can do to alleviate this. But their primary concern in that mentality was not like hating this transness and being so, I mean, they were afraid of what it would mean for my life and what I was going to experience. And
course.
it would be really difficult for me. And so that worried them. And so they were like, okay, your life is going to be so much easier if we can just like get rid of this because it's going to be so complicated.
Right.
And so their priority was me and my health and my happiness. But at the time, it felt like the only way to be healthy, the only way to be happy, the only way to have, you know, the fullness of joy was to shove it in a box, put it away, ignore, you know,
Do
find
what
some
we
sort
can
of
to help you
cure.
feel better.
Yeah. But the motivation for that was always
Love for you.
centered around their love for me and their desire to protect me.
Of course.
And so when I left on my mission, they were like, my mentality leaving on my mission was, if I'm faithful enough, if I'm an exact enough missionary, you know, I'll find a cure. God's going to help me have this desire to be a woman, a desire to marry a man, a desire to, you know, all these things that I didn't have, which didn't happen. But my parents, I think, kind of felt the same way. Like, okay, Landon's going to go on a mission, and maybe this is all going to work itself out. You know, we'll all have faith, we'll all pray. And we were all on our knees, you know, every day trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But by the time I came home and realized, like, this is not, like, something is not working. Like, I can't, like, something has to change. I don't know what it is, but I've got to explore this. And that was scary for them to have to be like, okay, we actually have to take this seriously now. Like, we can't just ignore and wait for it to work itself out. Like, we have to actually put work into this. Like, this is going to be a journey that we're going to have to walk down together. But their motivation stayed my health and happiness. And I'm so grateful that they trusted me to know what was best for me and to know what was going to make me happy. And I didn't know exactly. Like, I had to figure it out. I had to, you know, try different things, learn different things, really educate myself, really work through my shame and my self-hatred. Like, it was a whole process, but they trusted me to go through that process, and they were able to, you know, be like, okay, we can't control this. There's nothing we can do but love you and be here for you. And I'm glad that they chose to walk that with me. And I think a part of what made it easier, and not everybody is able to do this, but the nature of our relationship and the way that we all kind of function was like that I came out to them before I even really understood what I was coming out as, you know, like they were along with me for pretty much every step of it. Like, as I was figuring it out, they were figuring it out with me. And so I'm glad for that, and sometimes that's not like like, people's relationships don't always work out for that to be a safe and healthy thing to do. But for me, I'm really grateful that was part of the process, that I didn't have to come to them and be like, okay, I'm changing my name and my pronouns right now. Like, and you just have to get on board immediately. And we didn't have a lot of that tension because they were just there with me every step of the way. And that wasn't always easy and fun. But by the time I was ready to publicly transition and everything, they had seen what it was like for me to make all of these micro decisions and little discoveries along that path, that when I got there, they were still had their fears and reservations, but they were ready to support me through it.
Wow. What an incredible story. And just like, I always say that, you know, I believe that, like, trans people, just like every other kind of person, we're going to be better off when we stay in our families, when we stay connected, you know, like when we figure out, just like any other children and parents negotiate, you know, like no child does exactly what their parents expect them to, right? And parents don't expect exactly what children expect them to. And so this is just another thing where parents and children have to navigate growing and learning together, and it's to everybody's benefit when you stay in it together, right? When you don't leave each other in that journey.
And that's something that I thought was going to have to happen. I was like, if I come out, like, if I can't do this, if I can't ignore and shove this down, I'm gonna have to leave my faith, I'm gonna have to leave my whole community, like, I'm gonna be rejected by my family, or it's going to be so uncomfortable that I'm going to have to walk away. Like, I really thought I was going to have to lose everything. And there were certain things that I did lose. I did lose some relationships. I lost friendships. I was pushed out of some aspects of community, but having my family with me through that whole thing made it possible. And it really informed the way that I interact with the community, and my passion for building bridges and building relationships and having compassion and understanding for people who maybe don't have compassion or understanding for me yet. I think if it would have been a really tense, really argumentative, really defensive kind of relationship that I had with my family through that whole thing, I don't know if I would have developed the skills to be able to do the kind of work that I do now. And I think there's a lot of value in advocacy work that's kind of that fiery, you know, sometimes you got to yell, sometimes you got to put your foot down. But I think there's a lot of value in the peaceful bridge building, community building kind of work. And I think my experience with my family built me into the kind of person that can have those kinds of conversations and do that kind of work. So
Because you saw it modeled, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing. That's
really
amazing.
cool.
I love that.
that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Really great.
so important, especially in this time when, I mean, there's all kinds of advocacy and activism that's needed right now, right? Because there's a lot that people are passionate about and need to step up and work together as a community to change so that we all can thrive, hopefully, in our country and our communities can be safe. But I love that, like, you know, I love that you've found your place and that you continue to find your place within activism and in the LGBTQ community, but also you mentioned outside of the community, you're involved in some other things these days. So what all are you doing these days as an activist and advocate?
Yeah, I've been one of the like big things that I've done recently that was new for me was going to a city council meeting
Yes.
and
Got to be
speaking.
there.
Yeah,
it was so cool.
It was cool. It was like it was scary. I've never even been to a city council meeting before. Like I don't know how they work. I was like doing a lot of Googling before we went. And I was like, I don't even know what to say. I don't know who all is going to be there. Like there's been people in our area who have been going to city council meetings with agendas that are very opposite to what I am advocating for. Yeah. And they are not always kind. And so I was like nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to walk to my car after too. Like, you know, I was like, don't know how this is going to go. Big shout out to my therapist for encouraging me to, you know, figure it out. But
Watching you and listening to you, I would have never thought on the outside that those kind of things were. You were
Totally.
so calm
You were
and
so good.
composed and just really literate and very impressive with sharing your experience. It was, you know, you have 3 minutes, right? Isn't it
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Yeah, you
Oh
have
my
3
gosh.
minutes, but it was chock full of just good. So just a little bit of background, City of Mesa council meetings. There, you know, we've talked to both John Giles, our previous mayor, and Julie Spilsbury, who's one of our city councilwomen. There were our first 2 interviews, or first few interviews, and we talked about the non-discrimination ordinance that was passed here in the city of Mesa, and there are some people that are wanting that to be taken away, and so it was so interesting going there and hearing some of the people that were speaking on the opposite view of what we have, and I realized that, gosh, I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're like mean people overall. I just think they are, in what I believe, is misinformed, and they've been told things and they've seen things that are incorrect, and they are acting, in my view, out of fear, and they were very strong in how they spoke, and strong, not to me, not in a persuasive way. And it wasn't factual, what they were saying. But what I was so impressed with Landon was that he was able to speak with clear intention and from his experience, and just tell the city of Mesa, the mayor and the council members, how grateful he was that Mesa is an inclusive and fair community to live in, and safe. And that just means all the world. It doesn't mean that Landon or Michael want different or more things given to them than a straight person has.
Right.
It's just that they want to be on equal footing and have a way to, if there is a bad actor, a community or a business or whatever, or a rental situation for an apartment or whatever, where they're not treated right, there is some recourse. There is something that people can do to get, and it doesn't mean that person's going to go to jail. It just means it's going to be brought to the attention. And all usually that needs to happen is that they need to be spoken to one time. And to be clear, in the city of Mesa, no one has needed to bring anything forward. But it is wonderful to know that there's this umbrella of safety for LGBTQ people and others.
Everybody.
Handicapped
Right?
Everybody,
people
yeah.
with disabilities, people.
Yeah.
There's just a whole bunch of people that this puts on an even playing
Well,
field.
people of faith too, right? You can't be
People of
discriminated
faith.
against because of being a woman, person of color, person of faith,
Yes.
LGBT person. That's good, right?
Yes.
We should. And Landon, I loved how you spoke about your journey of buying a home and how, being a longtime Mesa resident, you're like, I want to still live in Mesa, like that was so cool to hear a young person just talk
Yes.
about like that decision of, I want to be here, like I want to buy my first home in Mesa and like be a part of this community still. I saw, I was watching the city council members as you were talking about that, and I saw that really hit home for them because
Yeah.
that's something we can all relate to, right? Like we, as you grow up, you buy your first home, and that's a big deal. And the community you choose to buy your first home in is a big part of your life, And so that was really powerful to me, and I saw that really impact, the elected officials in the room, and just being like, oh, we really get this person in front of us. Like we can relate to them because of that. It was really cool.
I feel like a lot of the speaking that I do ends up just being trying to communicate to people that I'm a normal human being.
Yeah.
Like, not that I don't know that I have the qualifications to get up and explain to everybody, how the law works, how, everything about gender theory, like everything about, I am not the expert on really anything, except for I'm the expert on myself. And I'm the expert on how I relate to my community and how I feel about my community. Yeah. And that is one of the biggest things that changed the way that I thought when I was first, figuring myself out, was just hearing people's stories and seeing the humanity in people that, I thought I was a compassionate, loving person. I thought of everyone as children of God, but I realized as I was expanding my mind, as I was hearing people's stories, and as I was surprised to find out that people were people, which surprised me to be surprised by that. But that really was a huge factor in shaping my journey and my change of heart. And so that ends up being a lot of what I have to say to people and the kinds of relationships I build. Yeah. And as hard as it is to sit in city council meetings and to see headlines on the news and to hear discourse that is trying to restrict my rights to choose what I do with my body, my rights to love who I love, all of it, it's difficult to listen to, but also it's I understand the fear behind it. Yeah. And I have one of the things that I'm the most embarrassed about that I've ever done, but I'm about to share it on the podcast, is one time in I think it was my junior year in high school, I was in a government class. Yeah. And we did a kind of a mock government thing where we were learning the process of how a bill becomes law.
Love it.
And we just pulled popsicle sticks out of a jar to pick our roles. Yeah. And so I was the president and I had a vice president. And so after the whole process, we saw the debates, and then it would come to us and we could veto and make decisions together. And one of the issues that my teacher brought up, which he was brave to bring up, was same-sex marriage and marriage equality. And this was before
2015.
Yeah, it was in 2014, I think. So right before, a hot topic issue, big in the news, everyone's thinking about it, everyone's talking about it. And the class voted to pass it, and it got to me and the vice president, and we looked at each other, and we were both Orthodox religious. Wow. And we vetoed it. Whoa. So I was I have been at a point in my mentality and my understanding of the world where that felt threatening to me, and that felt dangerous, and that felt bad, and that felt wrong, morally and bad for society, and all of these things that I don't know that I had really thought through the reasoning behind why I felt that way, but that's the way that I felt, and it was something that scared me. And at the time, it was something that I felt so proud of myself for doing. I'm so strong. I'm so Christ-like for standing up for marriage. And now looking back, I'm I know for a fact now that there were LGBT people in that classroom, and I was willing to look them in the eye and tell them that I didn't think that they should have a right to love who they love. Yeah. I have been at that point. Yeah.
But you were doing it to your own self as well.
Yeah.
Yes, without even realizing it, because I did
Right.
not, like should have known at the time, but I did not
There's
know
no
at the time. Yeah, like I could have known, I guess, if I would have, had a bit more exposure. But having come from that place, not that long ago, like this year is my 10-year since graduating high school.
Oh, wow.
I know if anyone's watching the video, I know I don't look it. It's the trans mask curse of looking really young. But so
Not a
like
curse.
11, it's like 11 years ago, which I guess my life has not been that long. So it feels like a long time ago, but really ultimately it wasn't that long ago that I had a completely different mindset than I do now.
Yeah.
And so as difficult as it is to listen to people who still have that mindset, and to be like, come on, it's 2025. Like, why are you still thinking like that?
Right.
At the time, people were looking at me and being like, it's 2014. Why are you still thinking like that?
Yeah.
So I understand that fear and I understand the pushback. And so I feel like that has allowed me to have space to sit in that with people and work through that with people in a way that's led by compassion and kindness for where people are starting from and where we can, meet in the middle.
That's
But-
awesome. Wow.
But it's not easy to sit in that city council meeting and listen to it. But I was glad to be a part of talking about my gratitude to live in Mesa, my love for the community, just my humanity as a person, and trying to connect with community members who maybe don't feel the same way about things as I do right now. But yeah.
But you never know. I love that, like, that exercise of empathy, right? That place of empathy where your advocacy and activism are really rooted in, because I find that to be very powerful advocacy, right? That is how you change hearts and minds, right? We were interviewing someone before who was talking about how the LGBTQ movement as a whole kind of lost sight of hearts and minds for a little while and was really focused on the law and policy. But we forgot that we had to, like, hold everybody's hand and bring them with us, right? And like and listen to people and continue building relationships. Like, that's such powerful advocacy. It truly does change the world.
So tell us some more about advocacy things that you've done. I know you were in DC with Michael.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was, I had never, the only advocacy work I had done before working with Equality Arizona was in LDS spaces.
Right.
And I wasn't really advocating that hard for any policy to change or anything. I was mostly just doing kind of support kind of
sharing your
things, speaking out about
story.
my story and my
Yeah.
experience, and kind of trying to build safety in the church for queer people, but not really doing anything too I don't know, aggressive or,
No.
meaningful work.
Yeah.
But I really had
Working
not done
within the
any,
parameters,
yeah. I hadn't done any real push for change, any political advocacy. But my parents had met Michael and talked me up a little too high.
No.
And then Michael and I got connected, and he invited me to go to an event that we have in Phoenix called the Rainbows Festival, and to run the table and to kind of share. At the time, they were working on federal level equality legislation, and so we were sharing with community members, what we were working on and the meaning of it. And so I got there, and the guy who was supervising me was like, oh, okay, so you kind of, Michael told me you kind of know how this all works, you have it figured out, so I'm just going to go walk around and explore the festival and let you run the table. And he walked away. And I was like, I don't know anything. I was, but I kind of felt like to be a good advocate, to be a valuable member of the queer community, I had to know everything, and I had to be ready for anything, and I had to be able to speak about things. And I was like, I'm not a good, valuable community member. I think especially after having spent so much time in just queer LDS spaces where I felt like my participation in my faith made people in the general LGBTQ community not really want to interact with me that much. I was too religious for the queer community, but too queer for the religious community. I kind of was in this in-between space. And so trying to break into the greater queer community and advocacy, I kind of felt this need to like know everything and be able to participate and kind of like, you know. And so I was Googling furiously. I'm like reading every pamphlet on the table, and I figured it out.
You
and
did, and I would never have known. You're
Yep,
very
sorry.
good at just figuring it out and going for it.
Yeah, I guess I'm a fast learner, and I
are,
was desperately wanted to be a part of something that was so important. And so I was working hard. And then Michael invited me to join the Equality Arizona team. And my first week of working was getting on a plane and going to Washington, D.C. to meet with Congress people. And I was so intimidated, but my job was just to help. We had delegations from different states coming to meet with their Congress people and to kind of share their stories and kind of do what we were just talking about, like sharing their humanity, kind of trying to explain why we need basic human rights. And so I was just like getting people from the hotel to their meetings, making sure everybody had what they needed, just kind of being this organizer, you know, like nothing that I really needed to be too intimidated by until like my second day there. We're waiting in, I wish I remembered who it was, but we were waiting in some like congressman's office, and Michael texts me and he's like, I'm not going to be able to get there. Why don't you?
Meeting.
Yeah, you were, yeah.
It was going long.
Yeah. And I was like, he's like, why don't you go ahead and start? It's like, I don't know what. But I felt so much pressure, like, oh, I got to know everything. I got to be able to do this. I had like studied it up enough and like knew the pitch enough to be able to share it. And it was
You did great. It
great
was
meeting.
hugely
Like it
successful.
went well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely scary. And I just felt like I was going 0 to 60 like so fast
0
into
to 1,000,
advocacy.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was like intimidating, and I think I kind of kept that mentality for a long time of like, oh gosh, okay, I gotta figure this out. I gotta be like, I want to be an advocate. I want to be involved. Yeah. And so I felt like there was this like threshold of knowledge and expertise that I had to have to be able to do that, to like to feel qualified to be in that space. And having that mentality really pushed me to figure it out. Like I've been able to do a lot of work that I'm honored to have been able to do. But I feel like recently, now that I've built so many good connections and friendships in the space, I feel like I have space to be like, okay, actually, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know how this works, but I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be this expert. I just need to be me, and I need to be doing what I'm passionate about. And I love to learn. Like, I want to continue learning how things work. But I've been able to, like, let go of that pressure that I was putting on myself. Like, I have to be a certain way to feel like I can be involved in this. Like, I have to be a professional advocate to start doing advocacy work.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah.
And having like, I'm like, it was a totally fine experience. Like, I have no regrets, no like trauma from that or anything. But having like worked through all that and figured out like kind of how I feel about things and like everything, I have become really passionate about encouraging people who feel, because I feel like there's a lot of people where there feels like there's a wall up between them and getting involved in advocacy because they feel like, I don't really know how this works. Like, I don't really know how the legal system works. I want to support the non-discrimination ordinance, but I don't really understand everything that's in it.
Totally.
And that really, or like people don't want to call legislators because they won't really know what to say. Like, there's just, it's scary to get involved because it feels like you have to suddenly be this expert on how everything works.
Right.
When that really is not the case.
true.
There's
How it works.
value
Yeah.
in everybody's story, where everybody is at, what everybody needs. And so that's something that I'm passionate about. Everybody can get involved, like wherever you are at, but also it's fun to learn.
Yeah.
And it's fun to be involved in. Scary at times, for sure. I've like been so terrified at some parts of this work, but also so glad to have been able to do it. And doing it at the federal level was like great. It was such a cool experience. It was like mind blowing that I was there.
Right.
And I met so many incredible people working in DC.
Yeah.
And it's been, I don't know, I kind of felt also like federal work, like the national level, like this is huge, this is so important. Yes, it is. Yeah. But I think underestimated the value of local advocacy until more recently, and realizing how powerful it is to build bridges with your immediate community.
So powerful.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And you can often affect more change. I mean, like, I feel like in some ways we all have had a unfair experience because we've all been a part of creating federal law, because the advocacy work that we did resulted in the Respect for Marriage Act being signed.
Right.
That's unique. That doesn't happen very often. But it's just, there's so much, you can influence anybody, right? Like you can as an advocate. And I think, Landon, you are so gifted at helping people through that process. Like one would never know that Landon had ever been afraid of anything because like you're just so good at just jumping in and doing the thing. But I remember you, walking through, the halls of Congress with me, and we're like in the tunnels walking to different buildings, and like you're just walking looking like you've done this a million times and helping people that are brand new and totally nervous. And I would have never known that you were nervous because you were just like, all right, I got
fake it till you
this.
make it.
Yes,
Yeah.
very good at that.
Well, I just think that's such good information for people because, again, I think a lot of people, in fact, I was talking to someone who we wanted to have on the podcast, and they're like, well, I've listened to the stuff you've done, and they're, politicians, or they're big wigs in this or that. And I want people to really understand that anyone can do whatever it is they feel like they're being called to do. And it could be, like you said, in the church, it can be in the public sphere, it can be local, it can be federal, it can be in your neighborhood. Like there's just no one way to do it. And I just love hearing your experience. And also, so when you said earlier that when you came out, it was a couple years before you actually met a trans person. So how have you built community since then? Like, what are some things that have been helpful? Because nobody wants to be alone in there. It's not that you can only have trans friends, but also to have modeled for you who trans people are is got to be very important. It's important for me to be around women and see and learn. So, I mean, our different identities matter, that we have some connection with people who are like us. So tell us how you found community and how that's helped.
Yeah. I think the first community that I really got involved with was North Star. Which I feel like a lot of people who are listening are going to be familiar, but it's a like LDS kind of centered LGBT organization that does a lot of like support work. And it does tend to lean more faith affirming than LGBTQ affirming. I don't know. I haven't worked with them in a long time, so I don't really know where they're at now. But when I started, it felt like a very non-threatening place to start because it felt so safe for my faith. Like it didn't feel like I was walking into something that was so outside of my realm, so like full of sin or whatever I had in my head, So it was a really awesome place to start connecting with more trans people. But the first year that I went to a North Star conference, I was the only trans guy there.
Really?
And I was the only trans person my age.
Oh my gosh.
So I met a lot of people that really changed my life and gave me so much hope to see people who are in their 60s, trans people who are in their 70s, who are like thriving and like experiencing life as themselves and not needing to wear this fake gender mask, So that was my like first community that I got involved in. But then I moved to Arizona, didn't really know any trans people at all. Like I think that, Michael, you were probably the first trans person that I actually was personally connected with and became friends with.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Aw,
I had like
so
met
honored.
plenty of other trans people, but like you were my first trans friend. And then I started meeting a lot more people through Equality Arizona. But as like an employee of Equality Arizona and as somebody who had like, my goal was like, it wasn't, this makes it sound so scummy, and I'm not trying to like it was a great, like everything that we were doing was genuine and building community. But like my goal in interacting with people was building relationships to encourage people to volunteer and to come to events. So there was like a level of my relationships with people that I feel like there was almost, like a
Evangelizing a little bit. Like,
like there was some sort of border between me and people where I like felt like oh my gosh, I have an agenda, like,
Oh.
but I wasn't trying to be sneaky or anything. I don't know. I just felt like there was this wall up, or other people would be like, okay, I know that you're calling me to chat because you're going to ask me to
Right.
volunteer.
To volunteer to do something.
Yeah. So I made a lot of connections. But the next like group of meaningful friends that I made by starting a Dungeons and Dragons group,
love that.
which was
That's
as
so
part of
cute.
Equality Arizona. We were like, okay, let's do more like outreach stuff. And so I just got on like every LGBT Arizona like Facebook page, and I was like, who plays Dungeons and Dragons? Like, who wants to come? And I had a whole bunch of people who were like, yeah, I'm like, I would love to do that.
so
and so we
cool.
started just like a queer D&D group.
Yeah.
And we had a Discord server, and then more and more people were joining, and it got so big. And so I like led the Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and we came up with a way to be able to run a campaign with a huge group of people where not everybody needed
So
to be there
cool.
every session. Like, we ran this whole like crazy thing.
Amazing.
That's
And
so awesome.
I made lifelong trans friends
Aw.
doing that, and it was so incredible.
Nice.
And I think the thing that made those friendships different from a lot of the connections that I had been making while doing advocacy work was that we weren't we met each other because we were all queer.
Right.
We like decided to get together because we felt safe, because we were mostly trans guys who wanted to do it. But really the thing that we were connecting over was our shared enjoyment of a hobby that had nothing to do with our queer identities.
It's really cool.
And so building friendships with people that were not centered around our gender and our sexuality, but that were just about the things that we love doing.
Totally.
And we were
the
like
best.
going around to each other's houses for every session. So we're like meeting each other's pets. And like, it really was just like such deep human connection
love
that
that.
didn't have anything to do with being trans, but it was so incredible that we were all trans, and like, we'd just be talking about hormones, and we would like meet for a session, and people would take turns going to the bathroom to do each other's, like, we had a couple of brave people who would do each other's like testosterone injections.
So sweet. Oh my gosh.
So just so incredible
Yeah.
to be like forming those kinds of connections. And recently I've been so like overwhelmed by work that I have not met with those friends as much as I wish that I was meeting with them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my recent connections have been like coworkers and neighbors and people around me who are not LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this big shift from like my entire friendship being like
Right.
trans guys, like that was my whole friend group, to knowing again, or like being like regularly connected with trans people, like having really like very few queer people that I'm connected with, has been interesting. But I feel like having that trans friend group rebuilt a kind of social confidence that I think I lost when I was coming out and I didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'm not worthy, I'm not welcome, I'm a freak, I'm weird, I don't belong, there's no space for me. And finding that space and be like, no, I am a person, I deserve to be here, I deserve to have friendships, I deserve to be happy.
Yes.
I am like an enjoyable person to be around. I'm,
People like me.
like people like me.
Yes.
And so that built the kind of social confidence that now I can build connections in spaces that are not queer spaces at all, and have the kind of deep confidence in myself and who I am as a person to be able to do that and have real, genuine, deep connections with people, and to be able to be out to those people, and to like, when I first started at my job, I heard plenty of comments about trans people. And now everybody who's there, I mean, I don't know what they're voting for,
Sure.
but they are so accepting of me and so sympathetic of the things that I worry about being queer in our country right now. Like, I feel like being able to build relationships with them has like
Helps.
changed
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
The proximity
absolutely.
matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, so it's been a cool journey in how
What
I
a
feel like
brave
I've
thing.
learned to build community through these very different kinds of groups that I've been a
love
part
that.
of.
I love that so much.
Really a brave
Wow.
thing, right?
So brave.
I mean,
yes.
honestly, in this political climate, it could be easier to just not be out about who you were. But what an amazing thing, a gift that you're giving people to go, oh, I've never known a trans person, and now I know Landon, and wow,
really awesome.
really great person,
Yes.
really great human. I mean, it's a gift.
It is a gift.
Yep.
Yeah.
My last jobs before my current job that I have, I was like stealth is what we usually call it, like where I wasn't out, which
Yeah.
I have not really been on hormones for very long consistently. Like I've been
Sure.
really on and off. And as like a non-binary person,
Yeah.
that is not something that like bothers me too much. But my voice isn't that deep. I like feel like I don't always pass super well. I have really feminine mannerisms, which don't bother me that much, but makes people uncomfortable or be like, what's going on with you? So I don't know honestly, how successfully I was stealth, but I was trying to be.
Yeah.
I was trying to really fit in and be masculine, and I was working in sports spaces.
Wow.
And I worked in hockey, which is like
Yeah.
not
super
known
masculine.
for being,
Yeah, no.
No.
So, and I worked
Wow.
for the Coyotes NHL team
Wow.
on their like promotional team, you know, like throwing t-shirts in the crowd, being like part of the
Right.
face of their media stuff,
Wow.
which I kind of got roped into in a weird way. It was so outside of my comfort zone, but we were like in locker rooms together. It was like
Yeah. Oh my
super
gosh.
masculine space, like very gender divided, like
Yeah.
the girls had their uniforms, the guys had their uniforms, like, and so I was not sure at all that it was safe for me to be out.
Right.
But my employers knew, like the
Yeah.
Coyotes team, always incredible in
Oh, yeah.
their like LGBTQ advocacy. Like
Totally.
they knew, they loved that I was there. They assured me many times that I was not the token
Yeah.
queer
Yeah.
hire. But like, so they knew, but a lot of my team members didn't.
Yeah.
But when I started my current job, my sister had already worked there. She'd worked there for, I think, like a year before I started. And she did not know that any of her coworkers were ever going to meet me. And so she would tell stories about her trans brother.
Oh.
And so when I started
meet
there,
my brother.
they all knew.
They were like, we know a lot about you.
Yeah, so I did not really have the option to be stealth, but I
Yeah.
chose to work there. Like I knew that that was
Yeah.
what I was signing up for.
Yeah.
But since then, there's been plenty of turnover that a lot of my coworkers don't need to know if I don't want them to know. And
Yeah.
none of my other coworkers are out there being like, "Did you hear about Landon?"
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like they're all really respectful of that. But having been kind of put in the situation where I didn't have a choice to hide it and realizing how incredible people can be, I think I made a lot of face value judgments about how people were going to feel
Right.
about me and how I was going to
Yeah.
be treated,
Yeah.
and realizing that like people are good
Yeah.
made me pretty brave and confident in myself that now I can just talk about it with my coworkers if it's relevant, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is often relevant
Yeah.
to be like, oh yeah, back when I was a girl, you know. So yeah, so it's been like, I don't know that I would have been brave enough to just do that straight out the gate,
Yeah.
but kind of being, I don't want to say forced because again I chose to work there,
Right.
Yeah.
but being in that situation really helped me again build the confidence in myself as a person and in other people around me to be loving, good, kind people.
Yeah.
Has now made me way less stressed and scared to just be out and be myself to people.
That's awesome.
Like you said, you know, a lot of those people probably had different opinions and thoughts about trans people before meeting you. And I just think that's such important stuff because there are so few trans people overall based on our population and our, you know, percentage wise, that a lot of people, they may have met trans people, they might have been stealth, they might have not known, and or they just may not have ever met a trans person.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy for the fearful statements and beliefs and about trans people that are said so often just really easily and just thrown off the cuff. And once people know a trans person, it really can change their whole outlook, and they can question the things that they're hearing, like, well, okay, maybe, but the people I know
Right.
know.
Exactly.
And so I just think it's really important. And I this conversation has been so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've loved listening to your story and your journey and both your bridge building efforts and the community side of it. I think that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah.
I love the conversation.
Me too. And you're my friend and I respect you and admire you and think you're an amazing human. And it's also been fun to see you just really become yourself. The more that I know you, the more comfortable you are as you grow into yourself, as we all do, right? As we age. It's just awesome to see you just thriving and being the amazing human being you are and finding community and spaces to thrive everywhere. That's the goal that we all want, right? Is that no matter who we are, trans, queer, anything, we should be able to live this life and find what we love in this life and people that we want to live with. And I just
And do
love
good
seeing
and
that.
be good
Yeah,
and-
Yeah.
Love
just
it.
make
Yeah.
this world a better place, and you do that every day.
I try.
You do.
I think being raised with so many religious and cultural ideas of what I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
made it hard for me to have the mentality of accepting who I am.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that I was born to be except for myself. And it's
Yes.
been so fulfilling to go on that journey to I'm not always the most confident person. I am not always, like the most kind to myself. Again, big shout out to my therapist for helping me with that. But really that I have never been happier than when I've been learning to be myself and learning to accept everyone else as they are. Like as I build that compassion for myself and others at the same time, it's like this self-feeding kind of cycle. It's been so fulfilling. I don't know, really my life took such a huge swerve, Michael, when you took a chance on inviting me to be a part of your work. But I'm so
you're
grateful to
amazing.
be a part of it, grateful to be here. This has been incredible. And yeah.
Wow. Well, you're the best, Landon. You're a rock star, and I find you totally inspiring as a leader and as a friend. So lucky to know you.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today
Yeah.
on another episode of All Out in the Open.
Thank you.